Cool.
and show you a little bit about how we built the story map for Starbucks and how you can kind of use the same concepts in your own story maps. I just have to figure out how to share my screen with Skype.
It's a good question.
And I hope it's possible.
I think I've done it before. Screen sharing view.
There we go. All right, can you see my screen there?
There we go. Yeah. Hey, look at that! Look at that funny-looking guy.
All right, so you said you're going to record this. I don't know when you're going to start that, but should I just kind of dive into things?
Yeah, go for it. We're on the recording. I don't know how the sound's going to turn out because I don't have a good audio recording system, but we'll give it a go. We'll see what happens.
All right, cool. So we are located here in Washington, D.C. at the R&D office in Roslyn. It's one of a newer and progressive office that is starting to build around the country. There's another one in Portland, and I believe there's also one in China. So if you ever get a chance, definitely check it out.
Cool.
Specifically, this is our office here. It overlooks D.C. We're actually in Virginia, across the river.
Yeah, I know right where you are, actually. I know that view. Cool.
Yeah. I like to tell people this is my office, but this is what we call the library. So it's kind of like a collaborative area.
Cool.
So what exactly are story maps? Story maps are a really elegant way to tell your stories with maps, basically adding geographic context to your story using multimedia, photos, videos, text, basically compiling all that into a really, really nice and elegant format. What's really cool is there's a growing trend in the digital publishing world of not just publishing really, I guess you could say, boring articles anymore, like the New York Times, the Washington Post, things like the LA Times that traditionally have published like 4-page articles online. And honestly, people's attention spans aren't that high anymore. And one, they want the information really quick and they want to get to the point. So the New York Times is in kind of a conflict of how much content do we give people without disengaging them. And they've kind of been in their own little research and development process of how to integrate text with multimedia. And one specific team in their cartographic branch is experimenting with development of kind of along the same lines of story maps, but they're one, very customized versions of it. They're absolutely fitted for that one story and no other story itself. So a couple of really cool examples are from the New York Times. I can show you an example here. So this is a really cool resource if you want to check out some new and really progressive storytelling techniques, some of which you can actually incorporate into Esri story maps. So in this case, you scroll through the story and the video changes as you actually scroll. So based on where my actual scroll movement is what's actually being triggered in the display. The text is moving, it's kind of going along the same lines of constantly feeding someone information, but really quick, concise information. And then you get into the story, and the story's not just text, so it's broken up by videos, it's broken up by sounds, if you can hear that. And then it automatically stops, and you move on to the next section. So in this case, you're actually experiencing the story rather than just reading and trying to gauge the emotions that the story is trying to pull out yourself. So that's just one example. I mean, there's a bunch of examples, not only from the New York Times. There's a bunch from the LA Times have pumped out some based on fracking. The Washington Post is using some, and then a lot of people are actually just, and we're encouraging them to go down the route of Esri story maps because, one, if you're a developer that doesn't have, I mean, if you're not a developer who doesn't have, coding skills, but you want to do something very similar, I mean, we're a really good option, and that's where Esri story maps come into play. So you have people like the New York Times, the Washington Post, the National Geographic magazine's doing some things. Even Google is doing some things, but what they're doing is very specific, very focused on one story, and not enabling the public to do similar things.
Mm-hmm.
And Esri has this huge user community of like over a couple million people, and we have to support that. And we want to give. I mean, we don't have to, but at the same time, us as the Story Maps team really want to engage the public and kind of what we like to call is emancipate the data that's been locked in geodatabases for so long, and kind of bridge the gap between GIS and public understanding. So we're trying to enable people to do the same things as what the New York Times is doing, but without having any coding experience.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So a couple examples of what we're trying to do. So Starbucks came to us, being one of our customers, and they're like, hey, we have a lot of our coffee is actually very geographically referenced, and obviously the geographic significance of this coffee is what they're actually pitching to the public. Like in this case, Sumatra blend is grown in Sumatra. They also have some grown, 3 different types grown in Africa. They have some grown down in Indonesia and other places like that. And this is what you see on their website. So my first take is like, why don't they have a map? It's a regionally focused coffee, and that's what they're marketing. They have all this really cool information of like the elevation, which one you could have a map of. You could have, if you're into GIS, you can start to break this down. And one, you have a bunch of attributes on the side here. You have some text. You also have an image. But where's your map that shows people where Sumatra is? I mean, if you're into the mapping and cartographic world, you might understand where Sumatra is, but I guarantee you most of the world will just buy this coffee because Sumatra sounds exotic. So what we do is we basically pick this apart, right? We take the data and we plug it into a map. In this case, we're no longer just showing Sumatra coffee. We're showing all of the blends of coffee, and they actually putting them all on the map so you can kind of see where each are located. One, you can kind of compare and contrast. If this was live, you could actually click up and down this little arrow in the picture, and it'll give you that same information. So a lot more elegant of an interface. They could easily just embed this into their website, and there they go. They have a map that accompanies their regionally placed coffee. Another really cool example is the USDA has a bunch of farmers markets data, and this is their public-facing portal to data. Okay.
Oh God.
Yeah, this is so. One, I'm kind of turned off by the fact that this has so much going on that one, I don't really want to look for it, and two, it's geographically based data, but why isn't it on a map? I mean, it says you can see a map in the upper right, but why isn't that the initial interaction? And not only is it just a map, but let's make this into more of an experience. Let's incorporate some analysis into it. Let's like take some points, lines, and polygons, and then run some stuff through it, and then we get this. Oh, sorry. So this is my interpretation of like, great. So you see the data, and like, one, that's really boring. So let's kind of like story map it. I mean, we have this really cool verb over here now that we're basically like, let's take that data and story map it. Like, so many different people could benefit from this, and basically we took that same database, turned it into a walkability and drivability analysis for the entire country, and shown where these farmers markets are, and whether if you're in a location drive to, more markets or not, kind of like a food deserts type of thing, but for farmers markets.
Yeah.
So basically, what we're saying is give your map a story that it deserves, or the story a map that it deserves. It goes either way. So let's say you have a bunch of really cool text and it's a geographically placed story. Like, don't bore someone to death with a really long and in-depth article when at the same time you could engage them with that story. You could start to have them experience it at their own pace and at their own time, and they could even come back to it, types of things. You don't want one person to read the first paragraph and then simply move on. So what we've basically done is broken up different ways to tell a story with maps. We've taken 7 different at this point we're at 7 different type of templates, we call them. Templates being apps that you can put on the internet, and basically each helps people tell stories in a different context. So what you guys were doing yesterday was a map tour. It's really good for place-based storytelling, where you pretty much just want to have an image placed on a map with some text alongside of it. The map journal, which you'll see in a little bit, really incorporates thematic data really nicely and different types of layers in web maps, at the same time incorporating images and text and video and things like that. So one really good in that type of regard, and at the same time you can use it kind of like in a blogging format. You can also time enable things and have things published when you publish at certain dates and times and things like that. The short list being, really good for images, the Side Guardian as well. Swipe and Spyglass is really good for showing data over time, basically between 2 different types of imagery. That was the Swipe and Spyglass. And then tabbed and playlists are just variations of the above. And I can show you examples of those too. So taking a step backwards, like, where does that list even come from? How did we determine those were really good ways to tell stories? Basically, our workflow is to work with custom partners. Basically, Esri has this huge user community, a lot of which are some notable names in the world. Like I just mentioned, Starbucks. We work with like places like Nike and things like that, and we come up with this really unique group of people to work with that all are telling completely different stories. So similar to what the New York Times is doing, we do very customized versions based on that specific story that they want to tell. So we will come up with new user experiences. There's this new lingo in the world called UI UX. It's user interface and user experience, and that's basically how people interact with your product and how do they engage with it in the digital world. So we'll come up with new UIs, and these include things like scrolling, clicking, swiping for iPads and iPhones and things like that. So we come up with very customized stories with things like the Audubon, WWF, people like that. And why do we do that? Because people have this really, really rigorous public expectation. Because 1, the New York Times is pumping this stuff out, and 2, there's this notion of sharing. So if I see this and I want a friend to see it, it's got to be cool enough for me to send it to them without them judging me. That's how the world's sadly starting to operate. So
that's true.
Like with Twitter and all these other types of things, it's got to hit this viral notion almost. It's got to be fast enough. It's got to be clean, and it's got to be in this like mind-blowing concept that someone's going to take interest in, and not just click it and say, why did you share that? I didn't even want to see that. So we have to match the public expectations with the org's expectations, because if we put these things on a really notable company's website, it's got to look good and it's got to operate well. And so what we're basically doing is making these custom templates for all these really custom stories, which then we get this huge mixing pot of good design and user experiences that we can pull from and start to incorporate what we call builders. So we start to break down, sort of like a GIS, but in a different regard. We start to decipher the layers that go into each different story. We break out like the interactions from the content, and like if there's maps involved, and how do we make that all come together if you weren't a developer. So basically, we're bundling these into focused apps, and like I said, this is where the real work begins, because yeah, you can make a custom story, but how do you enable someone with no coding experience to make that same story, um, and for it to operate, at that same level of expectation? So this user experience thing is what we're really trying to hammer on, and a lot of people in the GIS industry have, for the longest time, have been involved with this technical, like nitty gritty database stuff, and they're kind of almost pigeonholed to a point that they're so technical, which is great, like that's what their job entails. But the hardest part is sometimes making things simple. So what we want them to do is, take their technical analysis and then start to decipher it for the public's understanding. What's been going on in the GIS world is, yeah, you have all this really cool data, and it's awesome. I mean, it kind of runs the world. It helps with policy, and people's understanding. It's like people believe maps. It's a fact. And so what we want people to do is take all that technical expertise, and what my boss likes to say is have it to a point where even your mom can understand it. Because like if your mom understands something as intense of like the analysis that you put into it, your job is a success. That's where the data ultimately needs to go, into the public's hands, so they understand what you're doing, and then they influence decisions. So in order for people to do this, all in this process of building these story maps, it has to be simple, and that's sometimes the hardest part.
Yeah, for sure. If you're gonna try and make my mom understand, you've got to set out for something big. That's gonna be a tough one.
Exactly. One, you got to make them understand it, and two, that you have to have them interact with it in a very simplistic way. And nowadays, some people are just tapping on a screen. So to understand a bunch of data by just tapping on a screen is pretty incredible.
Yeah.
The other thing too is great defaults. Is we're building these story maps with these builder functions. Okay, and these builder functions, our goal is to allow people to not make a bad story. Again, a huge challenge. So we work with designers like Alan. My boss is a designer. I work on design. Everyone kind of contributes to the fact that, yeah, there is a certain use case to have a bright pink and bright purple, or really gaudy yellows and things like that. That there is definitely a use case for that, but in most circumstances, that is not the case. So what we're doing is basically trying to come up with really, really good color sets, font sets, themes, and styles and layouts and things like that people really are forced into creating good stories. Yeah, the colors might not perfectly fit their organization, but they're close enough, one. And if they do want to make that gaudy, bright, neon type of story map, feel free. Like, we give people that opportunity. It is a little bit more work, obviously, to customize anything it is, but they do have that opportunity. And up front, we're just like, hey, this is what looks really good, and we encourage you to go with it. And again, to even do things like that is extremely difficult. At the same time, you have to design for people with colorblind capabilities and things like that. So some challenges that we're starting to encounter is we're starting to look at two different audiences, which is the GIS realm and then the public's expectations. So one, like I was saying, you have to take that really technical analysis and then bridge the gap to how people actually understand that. So not only are you just creating a map with analysis on it and handing it to your boss to interpret, the GIS professional is now kind of like public outreach, and to give someone in that position the power to put their work out to the public is pretty empowering. So you're no longer just doing analysis for you and your boss, and those are the only people seeing it. You're now being able to have your work seen by potentially millions of people if it really takes off. And that's what's really cool about the cloud is, you host it online, but the internet's accessible. Again, standards and expectations, and we're working with like a wide audience trying to establish really clear and focused results. So what story maps tend to kind of shy towards is the more conservation and environmentalism aspect, which is really cool. But at the same time, Esri's user community is everyone from the oil industry to people who track whales to people who monitor lizards to people who do solar power to people who do wind power. Like, it is mind-blowing how many different types of customers we have, and we're trying to appeal to every single one of them, right? So another challenge is to bridge that gap, but at the same time make everyone happy. And then the largest thing is to make custom results from a tool. We want people to really take pride in their work, and the only way for them to do that is to, one, they've invested time into it, and then two, give them the opportunity to make it theirs. Like, give them, we have great defaults, but give them so many defaults that they have the power to manipulate within that. So basically, let's get started. I'm going to go through an example of how to use the map journal, and it's going to show you some different techniques and things like that you can start to incorporate. For those of you not familiar with map journal, it'll give you an idea of how to build one. And I'm just going to dive into it. So I'm going to get out of my presentation. And this is our Storymaps website. Oh, this is our new map tour template. So we published this story, and there's a really cool photographer who takes pictures of bees.
Yeah.
And we put it into a map tour. This is the new map tour. It's not out yet, but it's coming soon. And basically you started, and these pictures are incredible. You can either have a photocentric or map-centric view. So if you wanted to see the map, you could go to the map view. Just as easily, you could go back to the picture view and kind of walk your way through it. So definitely check that out. What I was showing you last week, Dan, was this crowdsourcing app we just released. And we encourage, and this is live right now, so you could actually go ahead and put your own view in here. This is people's views from all over the world for DGIS Day and Geography Awareness Week, which is this week. So you can go around, and these are people who literally might have just put their pictures in here yesterday or today.
Yeah, we'll do that tomorrow for sure.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Let's see if anyone in China has actually contributed. Yeah, cool. So there are some folks over there. So yeah, definitely check that out. That's on our homepage. But the most probably resourceful thing that you're going to need to do is go to the apps page. And right off the bat, you guys might have done this, is just start building a map tour right away. But then at the same time, you can go ahead and just build a map journal right away. So if you click that, one, I'm logged in already. So if you're not, it'll just prompt you to log in. And the map journal basically comes in two different styles at the moment. There's one, the side panel, and then two, the floating panel, which is kind of like a transparent text column that you can scroll up and down through.
Okay.
And in this case, I'm going to go with the side panel. And we don't hold you to that. You can actually change it later on. And then we start to walk you through this building experience. So in this case, we're building a story map for Starbucks, doing a sort of bean to cup type of thing. So where it was grown to where people actually drink it out of a cup.
Cool.
And let's just name it bean to cup. And the main stage is where most of your maps will go. And you'll see too that there's going to be images in some cases. And then the side panel is a really good spot for text. In this case, a really cool way to do this is to have an image to start out. Mine are hosted on Flickr. So you can go ahead and load up your Flickr album. And find my Starbucks folder. And we'll start out with this one. Okay. Hold on, before I go too far, I'll show you the actual app that's live. Here we go. So Starbucks has this live in their account, but we built it for them.
Cool.
And this is what I'm going to show you how to build. So you see as you go through it, the map changes, pictures start to show up.
As you scroll.
How do you, yeah, as you're scrolling down, it does that. So do you have to, how do you set those map changes?
Yep, so I will show you that too. It's pretty cool and it's really simple.
I think I've seen maybe one of these on one of the map journals on like interstates or highways in China. How do you,
Intersection or like interchanges.
yeah, interchanges, yeah.
That was a very old one, but yeah, that was one of the original concepts for this whole map journal in the first place.
Cool. No, I like this. This is a cool layout.
So let me just come in. I've basically compiled my text in a Word document. And in this case, I have an image. You can go ahead and add that. Cool. So that stuff's in there now. And let's go ahead and just change the theme right away, which changes the colors a little bit more towards an organic look. In this case, they use this one. We also have the opportunity to change the fonts. These are really good standardized web fonts that work really well. And let's just do that. Cool. We also have the ability to change the layout. Okay, like I said, you're not married to one side or the other. Then you also have the opportunity to change it from right to left or left to right, and the sizes. Let's go ahead and just make it small so you can see what it looks like. Cool. So let's go ahead and add another section. Is this keeping up pretty quick on your end?
No, it's working really well. I'm actually surprised considering I'm in China, but the internet's not always great. But it's do you recommend when building these that you write out all of your text in a Word document and then transfer it over?
Yeah, definitely. One, just in case the internet fails on you and you lose your stuff, you still have your stuff backed up somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And then two, it's kind of a good way to do it just about the storyboarding process. You kind of understand what you're doing. I mean, don't feel like you have to, but it is a good way to kind of back everything up.
Yeah, I think with my students too, creating, I think it'd be really helpful because they tend to just try to dive into it without thinking about the bigger picture at all. And so
Right.
It's nice for them to kind of have to lay out the whole, or at least a good, have a good sense of what, if they want to make edits once they've got it in there, that's fine. But it's, yeah, I think that's a good suggestion.
Totally. So then I've went ahead and brought in a map that I've made on ArcGIS Online. So you can actually just search, and if you have maps made, great, you can search the entire online database. And in this case, I've made a bunch. So this is where you can set different parameters of your web map for that specific section in the story. So it's going to load my web map, and this is what it looks like, and I kind of want it to show everywhere on the initial map. So I can go ahead and move it to where I want, go ahead and save it. And then I also can change the content, which is the layers within that web map. So in this case, you don't see the dark. Actually, let's see the dark and not the National Geographic base map. I also don't want the orange route. No more San Diego farmers. So basically the routes and specific points. And let's not do that first. So I can save that. I also can include a legend if I wanted to. That would be brought over from JS Online. And an overview if I want, but in this case I don't. So I can add that. It goes ahead and adds my web map. And let's just continue. So the next section is going to actually start to incorporate different types of movement. And this is going to be in Malawi. And I'm going to use the same map in this case. But I want to have the content change. So in this case, I want to zoom into Malawi. All right, so this is basically where the copy's from. All right, let's save that. Let's change the content. Let's turn those off so you can start to see the lay of the land a little bit.
What can you just? What were you clicking on to open up the map content?
So when you start to add different web maps, you have location, content, and then pop-up.
Okay.
If you go to custom configuration in the content section, these are all the layers in my web map.
Yeah.
And I can toggle them on and off.
Cool.
So I go down to location, and what's really cool about this is that the imagery actually shows the actual farm. Let's start at the farm.
And this is just the standard satellite imagery.
Yeah.
That base map, cool.
So it's grown next to this mountain. And you can see the farm. So, pretty cool.
That is really cool, yeah. I guess that's probably the simplest way is to make one web map that has the whole story in it. And then just by toggling different layers on and off, you can create kind of really, distinct visual experiences for each, even though it's in the same web map, it looks like you're in a different map.
Yeah, exactly. And even for speed purposes, it's better to have one web map with a bunch of different layers so it doesn't have to load each web app.
Yeah.
So you can have as many layers as you want, and then just toggle things on and off depending on your story.
Cool.
So in this case, let's add one section. I'm not going to do everything. Talk about the process a little bit. Let's add another section. Let's keep all that. Okay, great. So in this case, let's actually make a little bit of an action within the text. It's called, we've named it a map action. So let's just go wash the disabled farm. Okay, so we can highlight that text. Go up here to map actions. And you see these little icons. This one, to change the content within your web map as well as the location. and this is just a locate address place. So let's click this one, and just as an example, I'll show you how you can toggle things on and off. So let's turn on National Geographic, turn on dark gray, save that, apply, save it. Cool. So in the section, this is my initial web map, and it will go through. They're like, oh, this is a link, and you can also give them a little bit more of a hint to click that, or to dive in more. You can say like zoom to or explore more and things like that. But if I click this, it's going to toggle on my National Geographic base map. Super cool. In the same retrospect, you can go ahead and let's pretend this is a location. Go here and choose some location. Let's see if we can go down to the panel. Save that. The content. Save it. Save it. This is our initial extent. And I'll say this would say the Panama Canal. Things are loading a little slow, so don't mind that. But basically, when I click it, it'll zoom me into the Panama Canal.
Cool.
So that's how you can incorporate different types of map actions, which start to integrate a lot more engagement with your audience, depending on what's going on in the story.
And it's almost done like the same way you'd set a hyperlink or something in an email. Pretty easy.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I'm modeling it out for so people kind of get the hint. Similar things you can do is you can put in live web pages. So I could put history.com in here if I wanted to. Maybe not history.com. But you did, yeah. Also, things from YouTuber video. Just an example of that. Either my computer's
Can I ask I just noticed like uploading videos from YouTube or Vimeo. And we were talking earlier about accessibility to Esri's website in China generally. Do you know if Esri is blocked here?
I wouldn't think so because we have offices there.
Yeah, I mean, I can use it, but I also usually operate on a VPN, so I wasn't sure if it's accessible to everybody. I know Esri's main office, China office, is in Hong Kong, and they have a little bit, obviously, different internet policies, but I'll play around with that and find out.
Okay, yeah. And another thing, too, is our website is translated into Chinese.
Oh, cool. Really?
That's pretty recent.
That's awesome.
Our website's around, too. So I'm assuming you can do it. And I can ask around a little bit more.
Sorry, what was that last
Tell
bit?
me.
I didn't catch that last bit.
You're just assuming that it's accessible in China. They've translated it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's available
But
in
yeah, you
Chinese.
can.
Cool.
So that's a little bit about the map journal. I mean, you can come in here and customize things for color. Let's do like a Starbucks green and my Starbucks red.
When you
Just
put
use some-
when you put that video in, what does it end up? Where does it end up showing, and what does it look like in the interface?
Yeah, totally. And YouTube. So let's just add a section. In this case, let's put a video. Cool. So they found my video, and we'll select it. And in this case, let's fit it so it fills the entire screen.
Mm.
And let's add some text. There you go. So when I get to that section, that video will be there.
Wow, cool.
And if you wanted to get fancy, you could include, YouTube has different options. So if I were to embed this into an iframe and then add some certain tags to it, you could autoplay it.
Mm.
So when you open it, it would start playing at a certain time or something like that.
Yeah.
And then websites, like I said, you can do websites. It supports Vimeo. The only thing is with images is that they have to be stored somewhere. So you could even bring them in from ArcGIS Online. And in that case, you would be just specifying an actual link.
Mm-hmm.
So you can bring in an image from a URL. This could be on your server or someone else's server. Yeah, and then you can do the same things. You can put videos in the panel, and you can embed maps in the panel. And the other cool thing is that you can change your layouts halfway through, and it changes everything for you.
Nice.
So you can go back to your story and you have a little bit different look and feel. Another real cool function is the organize button, so you can drag and drop sections into a different order.
That's helpful.
Kind of like WordPress. You can also specify the time and date that you want it to be published. Let's say it's a draft and you're still working on it. Your map journal can be public. You can be working on things, and then when you want it to go live, it just swaps on, basically.
And you can publish different sections at different times. So you could literally like say like for our case, we're doing this walk, and you want every day's post to be published a day later. Then to give you time to get everything uploaded, and then you can just set that time. Could you do that?
Yeah, exactly. So you could come in here and choose the date and then the actual time of the day.
Cool.
What's really useful for that is if it's on your homepage, and let's say you have an event coming up and you've already pre-planned everything, you can set that date and time so when your event starts, it automatically publishes to your homepage.
Yeah, that's cool. What would you recommend, John, we're really creating, maps of our journeys as we're walking or as we're paddling. So like there's this real, it's not that it's not similar to the coffee bean to cup story, because it's a very sequential story, but it's like we're calling these maps planet lines, and I'm just trying to sort out which of these apps, the map tour or the map journal, actually works better. I was looking at the kids' map tours yesterday, and it just presents this really clear. You can just like see their journey as it kind of unfolds. And I guess you can do the same, but it seems like with Map Journal, but it seems a little bit more text. I don't know, text oriented.
Yeah. It's definitely more text oriented towards like a journalist. But if they just have images and videos and things like that, the map tour is a definite way to go. And I would recommend even using our new map tour once it's available.
Cool.
To spice it up a little bit. But what's cool is that, yeah, you have a map tour with a bunch of points on your map, but you can actually just go into that web map and draw lines of the paths that they went. So when you reopen the map tour, it's pulling from that same web map, and then it's going to incorporate those lines into the story.
Cool. Cool. So that makes sense. You can actually, that way it's not just points, you have the lines as well.
Yeah, totally. And I believe there's a bunch of examples of how people have done that in our gallery.
Mm-hmm.
So you can kind of see how people have customized it and added different types of things and done it that way. But yeah, the map tour might be a good direction to go, and then maybe a map journal to synthesize everything after the walk, after people have maybe reflected on it. And yeah, here we go. So Alan made this. He walked around the mall. He really likes doing this on the weekend. He's my boss. I don't know. He likes it a lot. So, which is good. But he basically went in and took the GPX track on his phone and then just uploaded it as this shapefile, which is a line, so you can kind of see the path that he walked.
Do you know what app does he use to get that shapefile?
I'm not sure.
I guess there's tons. It doesn't really matter the specific one. I've been trying to find a good one for China because getting accurate location services and GPS, tracking can actually be difficult for some reason in China sometimes.
I can maybe let me write that down. I believe we have reps for specific regions in the world, so maybe I can get in touch with like our Asia, Southeastern Asia rep for Esri and see if they have any more information, and maybe they could shoot you some resources.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Thank you.
I use Moves personally, but I think we talked about that last time, and it might not work in China.
Yeah. John Francis and I are definitely really interested in talking with you, and if you think anybody else is appropriate to talk to especially when we're both in DC in December. I just think that there's a lot of potential here, and yeah, we'd love to partner up. I like the map journal a lot. I'm just trying to think, it doesn't, what I like is actually maybe different individuals have different preferences. We were kind of thinking like we wanted to create kind of like this crowdsourcing map where everyone's planet lines are being placed onto, everyone's journeys, right, are being placed onto one map that's being shared around the world. But maybe you guys could think of a more powerful way to connect these maps. Like maybe it's more like a gallery of maps, kind of like you guys have on your website, and we just support people who are participating in creating their own unique story map, and then it's just a gallery of story maps that we display and people can explore, rather than just one web map with tons of different stories on them.
Could you have both, or would it be too confusing?
Yeah, and like I was saying about that crowdsourcing app, and I don't want to promise something that might not happen, but that's supposed to be out for release, so we're going to try to enable people to use that on their own. And I think that would be a good solution, and we might be able to hook you up with that before it's released.
Cool.
I wanted to test some things, but I'd have to check on all that. So,
yeah,
like I said, I don't want to promise anything that can't happen, but I think that'd be a really cool resource. So that would both show where people are walking, and then if they wanted to, they could, have their point. But in a later idea, they could go back and edit that point and put in the link to, let's say, a map journal that kind of synthesizes it after the fact.
I see. So yeah, one of my friends here was asking, Andy. He was asking if you could do both, and it sounds like potentially you could. You kind of have a map journal linked inside this like crowdsourced story map. Each little point could link to a personal map tour that shows things in more detail. That's an interesting idea.
Totally. So it's kind of like a dream within a dream, right? But it's just a story map within a story map.
Yeah. How far can we go in that story map within a story map within a story map? within a story
You'd be
map.
surprised.
Yeah, actually, it's funny because we have, we generally have groups walking together, and they create a single story. But then you could have individuals create a story map, so you could have a, you know,
Different perspectives.
here's the China point, and then within China, 20 different groups walking, and then within each group, more people. I love it. It's great. It's
Yeah.
trippy.
Again, this is the idea of the crowdsourcing app.
Yeah,
Like we have people in India who are contributing really cool pictures to us.
I bet. Yeah.
Right? This is like someone's day, which is pretty mind blowing.
It is. Yeah, the world's a crazy place. There's lots of wild stuff to look at.
Yeah, super cool. So, I mean, that's just a little bit of a map tour. Did you guys want me to go over anything else?
I think it's really helpful. I mean, I like the interface. It seems really easy. One thing that I'm going to take away is sort of the supporting the students in developing their content and their story to a fuller picture before they start trying to work on the technical aspects of getting everything entered and organized. Like the idea of storyboarding something, because it typically when they think of mapping, I don't think my students, I think they just do a step-by-step approach in the interface itself. But I think Storymap presents an opportunity to sort of step back and, hey, what do we really want to say here? What's the bigger story that we're trying to tell? And excited to get the students thinking about that and think about that. But yeah, it looks super easy.
A lot of people start working on these things and then they kind of stop because they get to a point where they're like, oh, I don't have this yet, and if they would have just thought about it and kind of compiled everything. So maybe look at that template that you want to use, and let's say you're using a map tour. It incorporates a lot of images, a little bit of text, and a location. So, start to get all that together beforehand. And specifically for the map tour, there's another way to import data rather than just pulling it in from Flickr or a URL. You can download that Excel document.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if that's how you did it, but it's a really cool way to kind of get all your information in one spot and then save it. So you have each point, its location, the color of the point, a little bit of text to it. You save that in an Excel document or a CSV, and then just upload the entire thing, and bam, it like instantly creates a map tour for you.
Nice.
And you can find that once you enter the map tour. So I'll show it to you. Did you guys use a CSV or did you do it a different way?
Yeah, I think we did it a different way. I don't think any of the students used the Excel.
Okay. So you would just come into this advanced options section and import data from a CSV, and this is the template. So you can just download it. It looks like this. And this is an example, right? So you can put your video URLs, you put the URL of the image, the latitude and longitude, if that's what it is, icon color, R red, B blue, G green type of thing. You also have your little short description and the name of the actual point.
So you'd need those points before you.
So this is a really cool way for people to kind of start their storyboarding process, kind of get everything together. You're like, great, I need pictures, I need a latitude and longitude, a description.
If they're if you're using like photos that were taken like with location services that are already geotagged, so the geotag sort of stored in the metadata of that photo file or video file. I don't know how to extract that metadata. I don't know if you need to, but if we don't have a separate reading in terms of coordinates,
then I would definitely go a different route.
Okay.
Because if you have 100 images that are geotagged, like, why manually go in and take the latitude and longitude? I would just Flickr automatically reads your geotags. So if you upload them to a Flickr account, it puts them on a map. If you upload them Darkness Online, I believe it takes that metadata.
Yeah, I think it did, because I think some students did that. So
yeah, so there's like a bazillion different ways to solve the same problem. So it's kind of whatever is the most effective for your own use case.
Sure. No, but I like that. I like that idea of having them get all of their like, okay, what information is actually going into this map? Because that's also, even though you guys are trying to bridge the gap between public understanding and GIS, I also want my students to gain some technical knowledge in GIS. So
Yep.
even though they're not developing like a lot of the coding skills yet, for them to understand sort of what those, like at the heart of it, what is this software actually looking for and looking at, and how does it work? I think that's good for them to be thinking about. So
Yeah, totally. You have them operating on like a college level GIS course, so props to you.
yeah, that's right.
They're,
They better.
they're sitting pretty for the future.
Cool. I'll tell them. I'll tell them you said that. Actually, I don't want to ask for too much, but they would benefit from something similar. If this recording works out really well, I can show them this recording. But if it doesn't, and you would be interested or available to do it sometime, maybe in early or mid-December, right before I leave China to come over to the States, it would be they're going to be making another story map. And so if you wanted to sort of do like a Q&A with them, or do like maybe even just do the map journal with them and be like, hey guys, here's this cool tool you can use, that would be, yeah, we can email about that. And if you're up for it, that's great. If not, I totally understand. But
Yeah, I would say sign me up. December's pretty crazy on our end, just from the development standpoint. But if you give me a date, I can start to kind of look at things and figure it out, because we're trying to do an overhaul on our website.
Cool.
By the new year. And then I'm gone pretty much a lot of January, so I gotta do everything before that.
Yeah. Do you have a fun trip in January, or what are you up to?
Yep, I'm going down to kayak in Patagonia.
Oh, what? That's rad. Very,
So,
very cool.
Go do some whitewater kayaking. For
Awesome.
2 weeks. Yeah, kind of get away from the computer for a little bit.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Take a lot of photos and story map it for sure.
Well, that's the thing I asked off for work, and my boss was like, "Yeah, you can go, but you got to make a story map about it."
You're like, I can never escape.
I know.
It's funny.
I was like, deal.
Yeah, right. At the end of the day, that's a pretty sweet bargain.
Yeah, totally.
Cool, man.
So, yeah, how many more days do you guys have with these guys? With this?